Okay, so Stacey Susa-Pinto is a best-selling author and sought-after international trade professional. She has spent over 8 years working in various trade-related capacities with a major focus on intergovernmental economic diplomacy, trade programming, as well as market access and trade facilitation issues. Having transitioned from private to public sector, Ms. Pinto has helped shift perceptions regarding the effectiveness of the public sector as she currently serves as the Chief Executive Officer of the Namibia Trade Forum, an agency of the Namibia Ministry of Industrialisation and Trade. Prior to the Namibia Trade Forum, NGS1 Namibia, she worked for the United Kingdom in Namibia as a global trade program advisor and was responsible for managing Namibia and eSwatini trade programming to ensure that these countries could continue trading with the United Kingdom after Brexit. So there's so much more that can be said about her, but we had to basically make it a little bit brief for our poster and of course for our introduction today. So I give it over to you, Stacey. Please go ahead and start.
Thank you, Dominic. I'm just going to turn my video on and make sure that you can hear me and see me. Hello, everyone. I hope we're doing well. I wish I could see everybody, but I imagine you can see me from wherever you are. So I'm in Namibia, I'm in Windhoek. I was just saying to Dominic earlier that I've had to ship my husband and my children away so I can have some peace and quiet to speak with you properly and obviously be able to engage with you without entertainment in the background. Really, firstly, just want to say thank you. Thank you very, very much for this opportunity. I would like to call out Lizola. I heard you calling her Lee earlier. I still refer to her by her full name, for stitching this up. She was a student of mine couple of years ago, and I guess with everyone who's sort of in my age, in my mind, I'm still very, very young. So when I see my students doing all of this great work, it just reminds me of how the years have gone by. But thank you very, very much. I take it as such a great honor to be able to speak with you. And I think I was particularly excited to know who would be in the room today. I understand it's academics, early career researchers, and really just people who are doing great things on the continent in terms of international economics law, students as well. I was a student at one point, and I must share a slight joke with you. So I was a student at the University of Namibia, and I don't know, maybe you guys are the much more diligent students. But in my time, I remember we had, our LLB was 5 years, and we had things like administrative law, we had international economics law, and we were so bogged down with like 8, 9 modules a semester. And half the time, those big subjects, I literally only crammed to help me pass. I literally studied to help me pass, and I didn't quite understand what the value was of those subjects until I lectured later, like I think 2, 3 years after I finished. And I had a bit of experience in the practical world in terms of how things work. And then sort of the penny started to drop and things started to make sense. Similarly with international economics law, my husband and I were in law school together. And I remember the first time we encountered it, we're like, oh my goodness, what is going on here? So we studied and crammed and got through exams, and only later in my trade career do all of these pieces start to make sense. And it's given me the opportunity to learn. So I was pointing that out to say thank you, because I imagine all of you collectively probably know a lot more than me in this field, because I work particularly on trade, but obviously appreciating that international economics law is much broader than that. So from my side, I want to say thank you for giving me the opportunity to learn again and to really come to grasp the issues that international economics law presents. So thank you very, very much. I'm going to start off really, I'm sorry, but normally Lizella knows this about me. When I speak off the cuff 90% of the time. But this time I really wanted to be able to follow a chain of thought so you could follow me and come to the point where we can have discourse and engage on the topic that I'll be speaking on. So forgive me if I'm constantly doing this. I'm just referring to my notes. So maybe just to speak a bit about my topic today. Today I'd like to speak about issues that are seemingly soft, or rather are collateral issues to trade, to business, to economics. But if we're actually honest and we peel a layer back from the shell of international economics law, they actually position themselves as very critical to why we do what we do, to why we research, to why we work the way we work, to why we write how we write. And for me, I remember speaking to Dominia about this, and I said, I'm terribly sorry, I'm not going to give you an academic topic. In some ways it is, but I felt it important to address the person that's sitting with the text and figuring out what kind of research they're going to do and to what end is that research. Many of the times, career or life, I don't know what your individual journeys are and how you have ended up where you are today, but we get thrown into doing various types of work, and sometimes you just keep going with the flow, but you don't stop to think about, well, what am I doing and how does this speak to who I am as a person? But most importantly, do I understand the purpose for which I'm doing what I'm doing and the value it creates at that bigger international economics law picture? So I really wanted us, and I think that the time that we're having this conversation is really apt. We're towards the end of the year. Very soon it's January. It's a really good time to look back and reflect, what have I done in this year and what can I do better in the coming year? And just to say, I have so much respect for academics, for researchers. You play a really critical role that we as implementers of trade or trade policy wouldn't do without understanding that kind of research background. But sometimes we get inundated with the busyness of our daily lives that we forget to actually ask ourselves, what is this really about? What is this international economics law about? I speak quite often, and I was having a conversation just earlier this week, the Namibia Trade Forum, for which I work, and I'll speak about my work a little bit just now. We signed a memorandum of understanding with the National Development Bank, and it was really to help SMEs in areas related to market access. I'll talk a bit about that. And my topic today is really about how do you marry, or rather understand, the bigger spheres of international economics law, but most importantly, understand what it is purposed to do. What is international economics law about? What is it purposed to do? What is it meant to achieve? The other thing I'll be speaking about is the power of proximity and intentionality. It'll make sense a little later on, but I just thought to just give you a little bit of a tip of what I'm speaking of, and then I'll come back to it. So I'm sorry, I just saw a comment and it threw me off, but it's okay. Thank you very, very much. I think this is going to be interesting. So I'm going to talk a bit about myself, who I am as a person. And I think the reason I'm sharing that is to use that as learning, or rather as teaching, so that through my life and how I have come to situate the value of the work that I do, hopefully you can take a page off my book and it'll help you situate or understand how you add value to the larger scheme of international economics law. So I'm Zambian by origin. I was born in Zambia, grew up in Zambia. And when it came to my figuring out which school I would go to, really, I thought to myself, I cannot study in Zambia because I know where all of the nightclubs are. I know where all of my friends are. Chances are, if I study here, I don't know if I'm going to make it. So this was my rationale. Let me leave and go to another country. By the time I figure out how that country works, where the nightlife is and who's doing what, I'll be maybe in my third year, and then I can push another year and I'll be done. So that was my logic. Let me leave my area of comfort and find a place that I will take a while to figure out, and it'll push me to get school sorted. So my uncle, actually, unbeknownst to him, he saw the University of Namibia on Channel O. I'm sure you know what that is. And he said, well, have a look at the school. And I said, okay, I'm going. And I actually studied, or rather applied to do social work. I don't know if Lizola knows this. She only knows the legal part of me. But it wasn't me. I didn't like it. I didn't enjoy it at all. No, actually, it was economics. I did economics and industrial psychology. So this was what my report card looked like. It was a double major. So I had psychology, literally A's, and the economics part of it was terrible. I was failing. And it really, really did a number on my confidence, because I'm like, I'm not this person. I don't know how to fail. And so law was always in the vicinity for me. And so the next year I applied to go to law school, and I went to the administrator, or rather the faculty, the lady, I don't know what they're called in these days. And she said to me, okay, you're interested, but can I just tell you, you cannot go anywhere if you have arrears in modules, which I obviously had a string of from my experience in mathematics. And she literally just shoved me off, and she said, look, I can't help you. These are the requirements. This is what it is. If you want, she said it to me dismissively, actually. If you want, go and see the head of department or the dean and tell him your story. He might just listen to you. Big mistake, because I actually went and I asked to see Prof. Horn, who's no longer at the university. And I told him my case, and I said, look, this is who I am. This is what I'm passionate about. I believe this is where I need to be. And I literally just spoke my heart, and I said, well, you've got to help me. And he said to me, look, you speak well, you've told me why this is important. And in 5 minutes, he wrote me a note and I was admitted. And that's how I got into law school. I remember in my second year of law school, I went back home to Zambia on holidays. My mother, she passed on about 3 years ago. She was very, very strong in business, but towards the end, she got entangled in business with another partner who just messed up everything. So she ended up being in debt and all of that. And this one day I was at home, and the bailiffs, the sheriffs, bailiffs, I think is the African term, came home, and they said they wanted to take our stuff because my mother owed money. I was second year. I literally did not know very much about law, but in my mind, I was a lawyer, and I'm not going to let this happen, because it was the second time it was happening. So I signed off documents, literally signed off my mother's money, paid the sheriffs, because I refused to feel that degraded by way of somebody coming into our personal space and taking our stuff. I was the only one at home. My mom wasn't home. So when she came back, I said, look, this is what happened. This is what I did. I was proud of myself, but it turned out the money that I signed off to the bailiffs was the last money my mother had, but that's another story for another day. So slowly in all of those experiences, I started to wonder about why I wanted to do this. Why was it important? So I was in my final year law school, which is, I think, when you finish after that, you'd either do your master's or JTC or whatever. And I remember we had legal aid in our final year, and our group case actually made it to court. And so with the supervisor, we went to court and we stood and argued for our client, etc. He was looking for a divorce, I know. He got it anyways. And I remember walking out of court thinking to myself, this is not what I want to do. This is not my place of purpose. I don't know, but I just didn't see myself doing well. Dealing with procedural issues. Yes, it's a different person every day, but you're literally just following procedure and doing what you need to do in that space. I didn't see myself adding value in that space. And so I said, look, this is not for me. I can't. I decided then that I wasn't going to practice. And so that's when I went off to do my master's. And just in closing, in terms of who I am, and I'll speak a bit about my work and jump right into the topic. I remember in my final year, it was a 2-year master's in international trade law program. And my husband and I said, we're going to finish it in a year. So we did our modules and obviously started writing our thesis, etc. My husband finished and his supervisor passed him off, and we were ready to come back to Namibia. And I went to my supervisor and he literally said to me, I'm sorry, but your work is not acceptable. I'm sure you've heard that before. You're researchers, you're early career risers, you're doing what you have to do. I don't imagine you've not dealt with rejection. So he was politely telling me my paper wasn't good enough to pass off. I remember being very, very offended at that, because for a person that's used to doing well and not being questioned academically, that was a huge blow. But I look back now, and this starts to draw into the issues I'll be speaking about. So my final year thesis was infant industry protection in the SACU region. If you know about trade agreements, you would obviously know about SACU if you're close in South Africa or wherever. Namibia functions as part of a REC, or rather as a customs union, which is Southern African Customs Union. So my thesis was looking at infant industry protection in the Southern African Customs Union, and how that is meant to help governments protect their industry, or rather grow or industrialize to the level where others are. I'll give you an example, and you're researchers, you probably know this a lot, but I'll just indulge you. When we look at the dynamics in SACU, we know that of the 5, which is South Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Lesotho, eSwatini, South Africa is obviously more industrialized, and there's always the argument. Right now, we are faced with critical issues as SACU to really think about the sustainability of the customs union, because now a lot of the other countries are wanting that economic sovereignty and want to protect their own countries, want to protect their industries. But when you look at history and how that relationship came up, most of the countries really, I'm going to speak loosely, serve as markets for most of what comes out of South Africa. So I was trying to analyze that and look at, my argument was that it was a good thing and needed to be promoted. And so I look back now and I almost see where I went wrong. It's so sad because that professor is late. I wish I could give him an email and just say, I totally respect his opinion, because I was obviously young and foolish. But I look back now and I look at what my thesis was. I was very, very heavily leaning on text. What does that mean? I was reading, I knew the 2002 agreement back to front. I could, even now, I would tell you it's Article 25, it's Article 26. This is what it says. And these are the countries that have tried to do it right, blah, blah, blah. I knew it literally like the back of my mind. And maybe that's where I found the difficulty when I went to my professor, is that I felt I did a good job in terms of engaging with my text and the resource that was available to me. What I didn't realize is that I was losing touch with why that issue was important. So my professor said to me, look, go back to Namibia, have a shot at this again. If you come up with something in December, send it to me. And if it's good, I will pass you and you'll be done. So I came back home and I started doing a bit of research in terms of what this means. I then came across the application that Namibia was doing for one of its industries, chicken. It's a company called Namib Mills. And they were putting in an application for infant industry protection, particularly for the chicken industry. And I started reading from newspapers and I started calling and I said, look, what does this actually mean? And I got to understand that if you know how a customs union functions, you have a common external tariff to goods coming into your region, if I can say. But within there, the goods can move freely and almost tariff-free, right? And so we were seeing a lot of chicken imports on our market, and this industry was trying to set up. So they were asking government to say, look, we want to create jobs. If you know about Namibia, we're sitting at about close to 50% unemployment for a population of 2.5 million people. That is not sustainable. It doesn't work. So what this company was saying, and remember, infant industry protection is not given to a company. It's given to an industry. That's why it's called industry. So they were saying, can you protect us as an industry to allow us grow, which the agreement gives 8 years. It's phased off. So you start with a certain tariff and it phases off until 8 years. So we can create the jobs here. It means if we're setting industry here, we're employing people to grow the chickens, to sorry for using the word slaughter, but I went to the factory a couple of months back. They have a really soft way of killing the chickens. So if there's any sensitive people, it's done in a good way, if I can say. So I really started to understand the issues that underline the text that I was talking about. It really came alive, and I said to myself, this is about jobs. This is about people. This is about their dignity. This is about our numbers looking better as a country. This is about Namibia proving the concept that IIP works, because it's a last resort in terms of the customs union. And it takes a lot for you to prove that case and to actually get it. I put that context in among other things. And this is what I talk about when I say searching beyond the text. It's understanding that we have resource in the power in the form of text, but that's not what gives it power. That's not what validates what we do on a daily basis. What actually gives the text power is people. What we do, what I do, is about people. It's about giving people dignity back. And even if you want to talk to me about international economics law, it's about sovereign states, multilaterals, WTO. Yes, all of that is correct. But if I even single out sovereign states, why would a country be wanting its economic sovereignty? It's on behalf of its people, right? So that is what it is about. Everything we do, it's about the ordinary African person. And when I brought that context in, among other things, literally my professor read it once and he sent me an email and he said, fine, you just need to proofread it, but you're done. And that really started to teach me something about the purpose of not only international economics law, not only trade, not only industrialization, investment, but searching beyond the text, searching beyond what do I have here? Fine, this is law, it's legal, it's binding, but what is it trying to do? What is the purpose of international economics law? And I think sometimes in the academic space, we get, I don't want to say comfortable, but very confident in our ability to conduct great research and come up with articles and great reports. But to what end? Have we sat to interrogate what is international economics law actually trying to do? But most importantly, what role do I play in all of this picture? So that brings me to my next point, which is, sorry, I did apologize that I would be looking just to make sure I'm not losing myself, which is sometimes happens. So it's really about questioning why we do what we do, the narratives that influence how we write. I asked Dominique to share a question with everybody here. And I don't know if he did, but I asked, I said, if you could write about one thing for the rest of your life, today you were told, listen, write about one thing for the rest of your life, what would it be? And I know we'll have a chance to engage, but I'm really keen to understand, what would you write about and why? I have my stuff, but also they're very linked to my purpose. So I'm going to peel a layer back and deal with this issue of purpose. Let's look at the AFCFTA, right? Just 2 weeks back, or last week rather, Namibia was one of the first 14 countries in the continent to launch its implementation plan. And what that means is that it's not enough for you to sign up or ratify the agreement. You have to come up with a plan about how you're going to implement it based on your context as a country. And so we had UNECA here, we had the UN, etc. In the Southern African region, we are third, so which is really remarkable. And I think we're doing really well in that sense. One of the things that we know that the AFCFTA is trying to do, yes, we want to liberalize trade. Yes, we want free movement of goods, of people, market access, etc. But at the heart of it, if you look at the AFCFTA, it's literally trying to give our people dignity back. We're trying to be able to be in control of our productive factors. We want to be the owners, or rather the instigators, of what our industrialization agenda looks like. You know, Africa trades, maybe you don't. I work in trade. I think and dream about these figures and they keep me up at night. We're trading currently with ourselves 14%, which is really little. With third parties, close to 40%. It doesn't make sense. I always say when I'm speaking that imagine we're in a room, right? I'm close to you, I'm sitting next to you. Chances are we both speak English or Swahili or whatever the case is. How does it make sense for me to sell to somebody who's outside the room and not the person who's sitting right next to me? There's so many things we have in common: language, distance, culture. So it makes a lot of sense on a lot of fronts to do more trade within our continent, because we have a lot that binds us together than divides us. And so that's really what the AFCFTA is trying to do. One of the other remarkable things that it has done, which no trade agreement has done till date, is it is very intentional on the role or the impact that the agreement will have on women and youth. If you know about the AFCFTA, it has different protocols. It has a protocol on goods and services, on goods, on services, on IP, etc. Now we're busy, I don't want to say negotiating, but countries are busy putting together their plans as it relates to women and youth. So there's going to be a protocol on women and youth. It's the first FTA in the face of the world to ever do that. That is remarkable. But why? We should be asking ourselves, why has the AFCFTA decided to be intentional about women and youth? When we look back at where the I don't want to say injustices, but where the numbers don't make sense, it's women and youth. So there comes the stream of intentionality. How is this agreement going to actually put countries to be responsible and to create actions that actively benefit women and youth? So that's why that's so remarkable. And then it brings me back to my point about the why. Why do we do all of this stuff? I'm going to give an example real quickly, and Lizola knows this about me. I don't like referring to notes. I just like to go with it. But anyways, we went back last year, the Namibia Trade Forum. We did quite a bit of work in the regions. In under 18 months, we were able to speak to over 600 SMEs. And just on the point of women and youth, I remember we went down to the northern part of Namibia, and we were engaging SMEs and entrepreneurs on market access and how they could prepare to access domestic markets. Because please do not tell me about the AFCFTA if you can't access your own local markets. It just doesn't work. So we've got some work to do in country before we think about exporting. And this elderly woman said something that I don't want to say haunts me, but it has marked so indelibly in my mind. She makes not maple syrup, I don't know why. She makes syrup from marula. Marula is a fruit, the same one that we use to make is it alcohol? Is it a liqueur? Marula. Those that enjoy it will know exactly what I'm talking about. But that's the same fruit from which she harvests in a part of the north where she comes from, and she makes syrup because she wants children to be able to have healthy alternatives to sugar or to sweetener. And so we walked a journey with her and talked to her about standards, about labeling, about quality, and all of that stuff in a language that she understands. And at the end of the workshop, she said to me, wow, she said, ever since independence, she said, I never quite understood why we became independent until today. Only today have I come to realize why we had to free ourselves from colonial masters. Lizola, you haven't been in Namibia for a while, but this comment came up again last week. And they said someone actually was so infuriated with the system. She said, I wonder, maybe us going back to colonial era was better because life then was better. That is a strong statement, and it carries a lot of weight. And that's why I say it haunts me, because over 25 plus years post-independence, and we're still grappling with issues that our people should not be, to a point that they didn't quite understand why independence was important until we made them understand how we could grow their market base. That for me is very worrying. And so it comes back, why do we do what we do? So I'm going to speak very quickly about purpose in international economics law, and then secondly, the power of proximity. Right. So just wrapping up on purpose, if I may, and maybe let me park it here. And when we talk about it, we can engage a bit more. But I want you to think about the text and the stuff that you engage in on a daily basis, whether you're working, whether you're doing research, whether you're trying to figure out what career you're getting into. Have you taken a moment to think about, well, what is my purpose in all of this? What is my role? I'm sorry, but we're living in a world that is faced with so many issues. We need solutions everywhere we look. And so we don't have time nor space for general stuff or theoretics or hypotheticals. There is no time. So whatever you do, if it's not targeted to creating a solution that is linked to who you are and what your purpose is, I really advise that you have a think about how you move forward going from here. Because writing a great paper is wonderful. It's fantastic. You get an A or whatever it is, you get published and your name is important. But ask yourself, what is this really about? What is my own purpose? And how does it link to the overall subject of international economics law, whose heart is people, whose heart is African, Zambian, Kenyan, South African, Nigerian? That is what we're trying to do. So I'm going to park the purpose topic there and quickly move on to the power of proximity and wrap up, and then maybe we can have a chat. I'm sorry, I will not take the entire hour. I asked Dominic, what do you want me to speak about for 1 hour? So I was very happy to know that I didn't have to stick to that. So very quickly on the power of proximity, I have been very intrigued by this topic. It's something I do in my work, but I actually didn't know that it was a thing. So I've been listening and learning about the power of proximity. If you know him or if you don't, I've been listening to a guy called Brian Stevenson. He is an American lawyer that has done fantastic work on the US criminal justice system, and he's looking at the rates of incarceration and why people get incarcerated, but most importantly, how it robs them of the ability to self-actualize and to meaningfully benefit from the economic activity of America. So if you want to be a, what is the term? It's called something, the name's gone. If you want to be sinister and think about there's a demon behind every door, you would literally look at this as a plot by the American criminal justice system to keep as many people incarcerated as possible so they have less responsibility. That's really what he tries to talk about. And this is what he says about the power of proximity. He literally says that you have to be as close as possible to your bottom line. So the issues for which you are purposed, or rather you are called to do, you have to be as close to them as possible. So he spends over 80% of his time in prisons, speaking to the incarcerated, speaking to young people, hearing their story. And what does that do? It allows him to be able to engage with the law as necessary to help these people come out of that curse, because that's really what it is. He gave some figures. He said 1 in 3 young people, and by young, I mean under 12, they almost expect to be in jail at some point of their lives. Why? Because they see it. It's society. They see their uncles being arrested. They see their brothers being arrested. So you learn by conditioning. If that's what surrounds your environment, you think to myself, well, it's going to happen to me. If you see it happening to 4 or 5 people, it becomes a norm. So 1 in every 3 young people under 12 speak about the fact that at one point in their lives, they're going to be incarcerated. Why am I talking about this? He says, which I completely agree with you, and I'll explain why, that if you are as close to the issues for which you fight for, it gives you the reason to keep doing that work. it gives you the ability to understand that issue in a way that nobody else does. But also when it comes to you being able to speak up for those people, you have context. So what we do as the Namibia Trade Forum, and I'm sorry, I should have said this, we are an agency of the Ministry of Trade. And our role, and it's so funny because I'm only looking at my life in different lens while preparing for this topic. Our role is to understand the heart and pulse of the private sector, literally. We have to understand what is going on, what are the issues, and then use our mandate to present these issues to government. Why do we do that? We do it to influence trade policy. So if there's trade negotiations going on, it is our role to make sure we're speaking to industry to understand how that agreement could benefit or not them when it's done. And we help create the national position for Namibia before it's taken in as SACU, because we don't negotiate as a country, we negotiate as a bloc, as the SACU bloc. And this is where international economics law comes in. Sovereignty, economic sovereignty and governments and relations and all of that. So there wouldn't be economic sovereignty or governments being able to engage in these issues without me understanding my mandate as the NTF and as a person, without me making sure that industry's voice is heard at that level. Because yes, maybe Namibia will have to speak to the WTO or whatever, but guess what? Who are they speaking for? It's the people, it's the Namibian people, it's the Namibian business, the SMEs, etc. And so when I said that in under 18 months, we've seen over 600 SMEs, I don't spend more than a month sitting in my office. If a month goes by and I'm not engaging with industry, there's something wrong. It means I'm losing touch. If I lose touch with industry, it weakens my government's position on the trade negotiation table. It weakens this whole idea of government's economic sovereignty, because my government can only speak to issues as well as I prepare them to do. So we are literally the go-between private sector and government on issues related to trade, to investment, to domestic market access, etc. And like I said, we are poised to understand the heart and the pulse of the private sector so that we can together work with government, figure out how our country needs to grow, which industries we need to protect and why. So for me, that is what gives me life. That is what keeps me going back to the office, because in my mind, I see that woman that said, it's only now since independence that I'm understanding why we had to get independent. In my mind, I'm seeing a woman who's producing 50 units of a cosmetic product and selling to their neighbors and whatever, and just needs knowledge to scale and be able to export. In my mind, I'm seeing young people who are just trying and looking for a break, but there's nothing. I can only advance or push for those positions if I'm close to those issues. I can't sit in my office and articulate properly why government needs to pass this policy, why government, right now we're busy with a submission to cabinet on the National Trade Facilitation Committee, which has given me a headache since I've come into this job. But finally, we're taking the bull by its horns and recrafting leverage and power and all of that. But I can't come to that point if I am distant from the issues that I'm meant to be presenting every day. So I pose the question back. And whatever you're doing, whether it's research, whether it's work, whether you're trying to figure out what you want to do in your career, or if you know what you would want to write about from now till whenever, are you close to those issues? From what angle are you writing about them? Is it Google? Is it books? Is it, conferences, workshops? Are you close to the issues that you say you're passionate about? Have you spent time to take a walk in the ghetto, understand the informal sector? We're doing quite a bit of work in that space as well, which is where the power lies. To give you some numbers, Namibia's demographics, or rather employment stats, the informal sector at present, Lizola, contributes 53% to employment, 53. That's insane. So after COVID, a lot of people lost their jobs. And what did they turn to doing? creating their own jobs, creating businesses. And so in our employment basket or pool, and we all know that government in most countries is the biggest employer, the informal sector is challenging that view. Because right now in Namibia, the informal sector is contributing more to jobs than to government. So I ask, are you close? How close? What does the proximity, your proximity to these issues look like? Because if I pick up a paper, I can tell, even if you said to me, Stacey, if you have time, read my paper, I will call you out. I will tell you, you don't understand the issues. And I'm not trying to be funny. I'm really trying to help. I will tell who is close to the issues and who's not, because you will give me something that's text and researched and Google and well-referenced, and it's great. But I know who understands the issues because they're close. I know who writes from a place of understanding. If I pick up your paper today, Lizola, and it's got no name, sorry, I keep picking on you. You're the most familiar face in the room. Oh, and I see Linda is here. Thank you for being here. If I pick up your paper and it's got no name, will I know that this is Lizola? Will I know that this is her writing style because I understand what drives Lizola, because I understand what her purpose is in this space? That is where you want to get to, whether you are a researcher, a writer, whatever you're trying to do. Your work must be so distinct that nobody misses it. If I spoke once at a women's event, and I was so moved by this. I finished speaking and this lady comes to me and she said to me, I don't know you. I don't know your face. I've never met you. I literally, but when you opened your mouth and you spoke, I knew it was you. I know your voice. And I was like, okay, is this stalkerish? What is going on here? And so she said to me, I've listened to your talk. I have a TED talk. She said, I have you in my head. Even if you were in a room and I didn't see you with different people speaking, if I heard your voice, I would know it was you. I'm saying this to give an example about how it's important for you to find your purpose in this space. If you're going to write about something or research about something, understand what the bottom line is and write from that perspective. Most importantly, see yourself as part of the solution. I think sometimes as writers, we distance ourselves from the issues. We write about it and this is what who should do. They didn't do well in that. But come on, essentially, you should be part of the solution. So that's the hat with which you should write. Yes, I'm writing this, it's critical, and I think who should do this, but what can I do? And that clarity only comes from you understanding your own purpose in this value chain. I'm being typical, and really understanding from where you're sitting, what value you can add in that space. And then lastly, really just to be intentional about how you're going to add the value. And I really hope that, I'm very happy to chat, but I hope that this has inspired some kind of out-of-the-box thinking. And this is what I meant, understanding the purpose for international economics law, but most importantly, interrogating beyond the text. Why is this provision like this? What are they trying to achieve? What were the issues? Why? Do you know that Nigeria was one of the last ones to sign and ratify the AfCFTA? No? Yes? One of the biggest economies. Another example, you might know about Afreximbank, which is a product of the AfCFTA. South Africa has not signed the establishing document. Ask why. What is really going on here? Why is this the way that it is? But most importantly, from where I'm sitting, how can I be part of the solution? So I hope that together with this sort of renewed thinking around purpose, intentionality, being the power of proximity, intentionality, all of that, I hope that one day you and all of us in this room can have a conversation about what we've done to change how we're doing what we're doing. I want to be able to celebrate you because you're one of the greatest names that has shifted things for our African people, because that's what it's about. I hope that one day we can get together and celebrate what we've done with what we know. And if this is not something you've been thinking about, it's not too late. I really believe that when the penny drops, you have the power to redeem time. And I hope that this has inspired you to think in that way and really just to spark your why. Thank you. Very happy to chat. I don't know if you want me to look at the comments or answer them. Dominique, very open to your leading here.
Hello, my name is Khalil. So I'll be moderating the next phase of the project. I think I speak for all of us when I say that that weaving of your personal experiences, then the content of the law itself, and then the systemic issues just flowed so naturally that I didn't find myself lost at any point in the lecture, and that's, I think, very amazing. But apart from that, I think it spoke to all of us on our own purpose being linked to the contributions we want to make. I think as early career researchers, a lot of the times we think of our growth goals in a very abstract fashion, but don't really think about how those goals align with the stakeholders we're trying to assist. And especially as lawyers trained in Africa, I find that a lot of times we tend to focus more on the internal logic of rules. And so sometimes we forget that the rules are meant to serve a specific context and specific peoples. So that was a very amazing lecture. We'll now move into the discussion point of the session. So if you have any question or if you have any comment, please raise up your hand or type it out in the chat. We'll try taking 3 at a time. Any comments or questions? Please feel free at this point. Right, so we'll start with Wayne and then Arnold.
Hi, Khalil. Thank you so much to you as well for having talk. I think it's some of the best stuff that I've heard all year long. But I've got a question, and my question is framed against the works of the great Amilcar Cabral. He spoke about using the weapon of theory to drive revolutionary decolonization. To just understand clearly where you're coming from, it's obviously about the praxis of trade and international economic law. But I'd just like to hear how does that feature in your approach to the praxis of international economic law, of using the weapon of theory to drive decolonization? And I mean, we could obviously stretch it further in our day and age to issues around sustainable development and so on.
Thank you. Do you want me to take that or take a couple more? Really, lead me. Very happy to follow.
So we can take 3 at a time. So Arnold, and then I saw Grace's hand was up. So after Arnold, Grace, you can ask a question, and then they can be answered at once.
Thank you very much for this session. It didn't really sound very academic. It was so more humane. It was like a story, and I think you're a great teacher because we just really felt inspired, and we could just follow all the way to the end. My question is really related to what my brother Wayne has just raised. Are you implying that we shouldn't theorize? And now, just closely related to that, you spoke of the protocol on women and youth, and I heard you it's like making a case for these people who have been excluded, namely women and the youth generally. But now there is this reading group I'm part of, it's called the Heart somehow, and we've been reading the works of Amina Mama. She wrote a paper in 1995 on democracy. So basically she was saying that focusing on, we might be losing the point when we just focus on what has been excluded. What about the thousands of women who have been included into these power structures since independence, even young people as well? And she gave examples that some of these women are there not because of ideas of their own. They are not there because of their militant action, but they're somehow there because of being married to powerful people. The youth, the same case. Some of the young people who are at the highest levels of power, maybe it's because you are just from this particular family, or you are like a nephew to uncle so, uncle so, uncle so. So I just wanted to hear your thoughts on that. How about the youth? How about women who have been included? What have they been doing since the 1960s? And just finally, I really love what you said, and I think that's some of the things that Halil and team are trying to achieve the forum, like bringing these issues like closer to society. And I just wanted to know your views about big professors, and I'm not attacking anyone, who are based in the global north, but making their work has been really about the continent. And that proximity is not really there. So are they just making noise? I think that would be it. Thank you.
Thank you, Chico. So one last one from Grace, and then we go to an answering part of the.
Thank you, Khalil. Miss Susa-Pinto, I don't have a question per se. I think just a comment to appreciate the approach that you have taken. I think I have been seated trying to come up with a question, but the lecture was it has forced me to sit and question how I have approached education and my dreams and how I want to further my education, how I want to establish my career, and starting to ask the important why questions. Why am I taking interest in the things that I'm taking interest in? I think lately I have, at a personal level, really been thinking about, am I more interested in international trade law, or am I more interested in international human rights? And I think your lecture has buttressed the questions that I have been asking myself, and have pushed me to ask, am I interested in this because I think it will make me money quickly, and I think my intellect will be appreciated here, as opposed to human rights, which are really, I think, what matters to my heart more. And I really appreciate, I think it's been very thought-provoking and has definitely forced me to stop and think. So thank you.
Okay, thank you, Grace. So Mrs. Susa-Pinto, you can respond to the first set of questions.
Thank you, Khalil. Oh, wow, I almost forgot what it felt like engaging with young people and, early career researchers and all of that. I really, really love the questions. So going to the first one, Wayne, and I'm sort of going to take Chico's part together as well, the first part of this question about, well, are we rubbishing the place for theory? Absolutely not. But I want to ask you a question. What informs theory? How do you come up with theory? Do you mind giving me an answer? Then maybe I can finish my thinking.
Okay, was that Wayne?
Either one of you. Happy for either one of you to take it.
Yeah, so there are two answers to that.
Mm-hmm.
Practice can inform theory, but theory can also inform practice, because I think at some point we need to ask the question, yes, this is working in practice, but is it working in theory to just improve the practice as well?
Okay, Wayne, do you want to come in on that?
Yeah, I also want to come in. I think with traditional legal research, theory is informed by theory. That's why you get lawyers that read the black letter of the law and scholarly works and build up on that and add to existing jurisprudence. But then obviously in the day and age we find ourselves, we talk about interdisciplinary legal research, which draws from various sectors and makes a very divergent connection between unrelated sources, and that's where practice can come in, where like Arnold said now. So theory can inform theory, in the words of Arnold as well, because you draw from other sources, but in practice also when you then look at interdisciplinary approaches to the law.
Mm. Well, firstly, I want to say that Afroeconomics law has some mighty smart people, because you sound very, very learned speaking about all of that. I'm very impressed by it. So here's my view. And I think that in the space that we function, the beauty comes in being able to engage with different discourses or pieces of literature or views or theory, and be able to come up with your own position based on what you're exposed to. So I'm absolutely not saying that there's no place for theory. There is, which is why I said I have a lot of respect for the work that researchers do, the work that theorists do, because that is what has come to inform even law pure as we know it. But for me, as a person who has experienced or worked in trade and has come to really understand how or not theory impacts the practical or actual lives, theory must not end at theory. There is a place for it, absolutely. As is, that's why we have, all of these case law, blah, blah, blah. There's a place for written pieces. What I'm saying is that it shouldn't end there. So as you're saying that theory can inform practice and practice can inform theory, I'm pushing or presenting that the two worlds function better together, because it's not enough to write a wonderful theoretical piece about why this is that. Well, what are we going to do about it? That's where I'm coming in from. So it's not to rubbish the place of theory. There is room for that. I'm just asking the question, what then after theory? I hope that helps. Chico, you spoke about the women and youth who've already been included, and what do we do with those? Yeah, there's a place to discuss all of that. But really, I'm going to share a demographic, right? In Namibia, based on our demographics, if you ask me to describe what or who Namibia is a 26-year-old woman, Black, 26-year-old Black woman who lives in the rural areas and is not educated. So if I'm to describe Namibia to you as a person, that is who Namibia is. A 26-year-old Black woman, uneducated, and lives in the rural areas. What does that say? It tells you that that's where our people are. That's where the numbers are. And so I'm not speaking about people who are, in advantaged positions or who are doing whatever because they know their uncle. I'm talking about where our people are and who represents those voices. So when I talk about women and youth, I'm talking about those that are not represented. I'm talking about those that can't even self-actualize because they don't even know how to start. They have no two pieces to put together. That's who I'm referring to. There's a separate conversation to be had about the ones with, sitting in the cushy offices. But that's who I was referring to. Sorry if I didn't make that distinction. Your slightly cheeky comment on professors who are sitting elsewhere and writing. Look, I'm not, I have very little grace for discussions that have no actions. I have very little grace for writing and talking. The Zambian president was here last month, and I think if you're following what's going on politically on the continent, he's seeming to be one of the good ones that we're seeing so far. And he said that we have to come out of a system where we set a meeting where we're talking about when we're talking about what we're talking about next. So again, like I said, there is a space for professors who write eloquently and beautifully. We need to reference their works. They have that experience, but that's not where my purpose is. That's not what I'm focused on. And hence my saying, what happens after all of that beautiful stuff is written? And if you ask, the UN here know me very well. When they give us support to work on projects, I always tell them, I do not want a non-Namibian to work on it. Why? Because they don't understand context. I've literally sent back a project because they sent me 2 names with people somewhere. And I said, I'm sorry, but they will not be able to understand what I'm trying to do with this project as well as somebody who's sitting here. And that speaks to the heart of proximity as well. Grace, if this was for you, I'm very happy. This is exactly what I wanted to achieve with this talk. So I'm very happy that it's giving you the space to think and rethink what you want to do. I do want to encourage you. Being hopeful requires you to be bold. You're going to have to be bold because sometimes being true to your purpose, most times, is never popular. But I can guarantee you, if you do something because it's fashionable or that's where the trend is, but your heart and your purpose is not there, trust me, one day you send me an email and you tell me you're frustrated. So go after what you want to do because you are designed by nature, who you are, to add value in that space. So that is where your calling is. And if you have to take some few L's before you get to the wins, I encourage you to do that. I am a testimony of proximity and purpose. Very happy to engage you privately to share how I've managed to go on this journey. So if it was useful only for you, then I'm happy.
Thank you very much. I think we can take the next round of questions. Please raise your hand if you have a question or type it out in the chat. Boris, then Izola.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to say, I'm so proud of the presentation coming from our wonderful presenter. We've been talking about this. It's very controversial on the use of theory in the continent. In as much as we appreciate the knowledge behind theories, we have always questioned that. When you look at Africa today, looking at this forum, the work that we want to do as young practitioners, we've always questioned the use of theories, especially when these theories do not reflect to our present situations. As our presenter said, most of us, we just copy these theories, use them the way as nice as they are, but then at the end of the day, these theories do not reflect to our present situations. And if we really want to, advocate for a new international world order, we need to be able to come out from the notion of theories. But we need to be able to be critical on all the theories that we use them. Because a theory that was created in 1880s, as I've always said, we can no longer agree that that's such a theory, especially in international economic law. Such a theory, we cannot agree that an old ancient theory, that time that the person that came out with that theory at that time was looking at the society at that time. We can no longer agree in this present situation that that theory is going to reflect to the changes that we have witnessed. And that is to say that we should be critical. We should pick a theory, put it down, analyze it, look at the theory. Is this theory, am I just using it to validate this particular module or this particular examination, or I'm really going to solve a particular problem in the society? And I think this is coming from our presenter, and I'm very proud and I feel very inspired when I listen to you present on your notion, on your advice on the use of theories. Thank you so much.
Izola?
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, I'll just thank you so much, Stacey. Always feels so weird calling you Stacey, but thank you so much for joining and doing this today. I have heard you speak about this several times. I think one of the first times that we had a one-on-one sit down, this was precisely the topic as well. And so I've gone through, I want to say, the school of Stacey, and gone through the ups and downs of finding my purpose. And that has actually led me from practice to theory, instead of the other way around. But I think the two things that I can say that probably from going on this introspection journey that I've learned is, first of all, that, like Boris just said, that your theory has, the way you apply it and the way you write about it has to be critical, and that critique comes from the practical, and it doesn't have to be you that experience the practical, but being in proximity with people that experience the practical, that can inform your theory, because we can't, none of us can be everywhere at once. So yeah, just making sure that you have those connections and that proximity to the people that can inform the way you write it, the way you research. And then I think I posted in the chat this paper by Grieve Chelwa, and I just recommend it 100% for anybody that's doing research, especially economic related research, to look at it, because when I came across it, it was such a mind-blowing opener about interrogating your sources. So it just, yeah, it's added this whole other dimension to my research, where I look at not only who's writing and whether they are African, but if it's an organization, who funds them, and if they are African, are they situated on the continent or not? And to what Nchiko said, it's not to say that if they're not situated on the continent that they're not valuable, because we need people in proximity to the West. We need people to be in the West. We need Africans to be in the West, to be in the international organizations. And we need them to write from that experience, because their perspective is valuable. It adds another layer to our research, but we need to be conscious of their perspective, and we need to use that consciousness to critically analyze their research. So we need to say, yes, Professor X is at Harvard, or he is at Oxford, or he is, working at the WTO or whatever. He is in the West, but he does come from a background of Africa. He has his extended family, whatever, in Africa, and that position of him being in the West adds this other dimension to his research. Yes, he's not, local, but it adds something to it. And then we come back and we say that after we've applied his view, we are now applying the view of the professor in Africa, of the practitioner in Africa. And with all of these views collated, this is the position that we come up with. And our position is rooted in either this theory or this practice, or yeah. So I just wanted to say, yes, thank you so much, Stacey. Finding my purpose has been a journey, and I think it's still a journey that I'm on. And like I said, it actually took me from practice to theory. But I do think that it's taken me to a place where I can add the most value that I can at this point in my life. It might not be where I am forever, but currently this is the place. And I think that as young professionals, we also need to realize that as you grow and as you learn, your purpose grows, and you can then change your course and change your direction accordingly. We are not mountains, we can move. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lizola. Can we take one last question if anyone has one? That is before the next round. Okay, it doesn't seem like anyone else has a question, so I think we can proceed with those ones.
Okay, thank you, Khalil. Thank you very, very much for those questions and comments. I'll just go with them as they came. Firstly was Asonganyi, think Boris, I hope I got your name correctly. Thank you for that, because you're right in a lot of ways. So if you follow the heartbeat of Africa right now, in a lot of spaces, in a lot of dimensions, we are asking the tough questions. We are asking the why. Why is this the way that it is, and why can it not change? And that's really speaking to your comment around theory having a place, but can we interrogate theory using the lens of what's going on now? Theory is not meant to be static. I think it can inspire or guide our line of thought, but we get it wrong if it becomes the sum total of what we're trying to figure out and determine now. Remember that theory is also influenced by a lot of things. It's influenced by narratives. It's influenced by people's beliefs on stuff. So at one point it was an idea, but you know, obviously with research and refining and now we know the Aristotles of this world, the whoever's, but at one point it was a human being's idea, and that person was influenced by their narrative, was influenced by their context, was influenced by their reality. So I'm agreeing with you, Boris, in that, yes, there's theory, but, and I think Lizola as well to a large extent, but we ought to interrogate the source of that theory. Where is this person seated? What are they exposed to? What are they seeing? What are they close to? Again, the issue of proximity. So again, it's not meant to rubbish either one, but I think for all of us in this room, it's really to ask the tough questions. Yes, I understand this is what you're saying, but can we look at it based on what we're dealing with today? So thank you very, very much, Boris, for that. Lizola, you're absolutely spot on. And I like the sort of divergent view you give around professors who are sitting in Europe, etc. The principle of proximity is equally the same. And I think what we're trying to do as Africans, particularly through the AFCFTA, is to be part of global trade, is to be part of that global system that can take decisions. So we don't want to do it as within ourselves, because we are part of a global village. So there's place, or rather there's room, or there's an argument for them being close to whatever they are at that point. So it's, like I said, it's not to say that, you know, you're completely rubbished or whatever. Even the example that I gave, in instances where I can't get a Namibian consultant, the compromise always is, okay, if you're going to have a lead consultant that's sitting in the UK, let them hire a local person as a local consultant. Because why? Then they give them that context and the understanding of what we're dealing with. So there is place for either one of these things. But I think the heart of it is that we shouldn't lose why we do what we do. And I think this is what you're speaking to, Lizola, that, you know, we ought to interrogate our why. And I'm glad you've gone on your own journey of purpose. I've known you since you were, what, third year? And I'm really proud of what you've done in just actualizing your reality and spreading your wings beyond this country. And like you say, purpose is not a destination, it's a journey. So even with what I've spoken about today, it's not meant to put you in a panic. Oh, I don't know, what am I going to do? Can I figure it out? No. Start with the why, because it's going to be a journey. As life exposes you to different things, you might not be exactly where you want to be today, but figure out, okay, I've shared my journey because I wanted you to be able to learn from it. I was in most times in rooms that I didn't want to be in, but what did that do? It helped clarify for me what I needed to do going forward. It helped clarify my own purpose, because I knew it's not this, but it must be something else. So yeah, thank you very, very much for those comments and questions.
Thank you very much for the insightful responses. I'd like to ask one more time, are there any questions or any other comments that anyone would like to give? Okay. Okay, Megan.
Thank you, Halil. Mine is a quick comment and a question intertwined. So most of the governance of a lot of our issues in Africa are at the mercy of politicking. And I want to tie this to the issue of perhaps professors who moved out of the continent to the global West, as it is referenced. We need to ask ourselves, perhaps, why did they move? And I think, or rather for a majority of people who are exiting the continent, is the issue of sustainability. How, if you're not able to look after yourself here in the continent, then you have no choice but to go elsewhere. So my question to our lecture today is, how do you remain, how do you pursue purpose even when it doesn't pay the bill? How do you stick to the things that you believe in even when it's not convenient for you at the moment? Thank you.
Thank you, Megan. I think, Gosego, you have a question? Please try to be as concise as you can, so because we're running out of time.
Yes, I will. Thank you. So the distinction that is being drawn between Stacey's presentation and theory, it is as if there really is a distinction. I don't see a distinction. I think Stacey is outlining a theory, right? As someone who has been influenced by the culture in Africa, the events in Africa, the realities in Africa, the same way that you have these theories of legal realism, positivism, which are really Eurocentric theories that were influenced by the Western views, Western cultures, Western events, and Western realities. So I don't quite draw a distinction. She's laying down a theory that can assist us in unpacking and unlocking the problems in Africa. So thank you.
Thank you, Gosego. I think I will. Okay, one last question for you, because I know he was looking forward to this lecture. Kasaya, can you hear me?
Hello, Kali.
We can hear you.
Okay, thank you so much. Just to reflect my thoughts on this prioritizing the theory of practical researches. And I think for me, answering this question depends on who is going, the identity of individual or organization that is conducting that research. Like if the one that is conducting research is academician or like university professor, he can focus on theory and challenge the theory. But when it comes to politicians or those who are engaging in practice, I think the research should be informed by practical problems. So the problem in our in Africa, or like in my country, is that most researchers are left for academicians. So that academicians write thousands of papers that cannot be implemented in practice. So practically they are meaningless. You can see a lot of research conducted in agricultural areas or even in legal researches, but they are not most of the time put in practice. But the ones who are really doing the job, like you can say the policy makers, do not conduct actual research that are informed by practical problems. They would rather give the work of conducting research to academicians, which have nothing to do with practice or little to do with practice. So I think prioritizing one of the over the other depends on who is conducting the research. So it should, I think, depend on the one, the identity of the one who is conducting that research. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Kasai. So I'll now yield the floor to Mrs. Susa-Pinto to answer the questions and just to give her final remarks, perhaps, on the subject before we close.
Thank you very much. Megan, you ask a very, very important question, and I will answer it with taking a page out of my own book. And I hope I can do this really quickly. So when I finished my master's in South Africa, I think that was 2013 or 13. So mid-year into finishing my master's. Sorry, do you want my video on? Is this fine, Khalil? You tell me. You're the boss.
This is fine. Whatever is comfortable for you.
Okay, brilliant. Thanks. So at about June, August of the year that I was looking to finish, until I got hit by the fact that my paper wasn't good enough, but that's a side story. I started looking for jobs. Yeah. I started writing to the Ministry of Trade. I even wrote to the company that I came across was doing an IIP application. I got nothing, because in my head, I had 3 law degrees. I had a B Juris and an LLB and a master's. In my head, literally people would be falling over to hire me. That never happened. I came back to Namibia and I had no job, sitting at home with 3 degrees. I ended up teaching English. I used to teach English to some Russian children. I used to get paid $100 an hour with my 3 law degrees. And then again, back to the point of proximity, I saw an advert in the newspaper. I actually used to be an intern for the Namibia Trade Forum. So I've come full circle to be CEO for that same institution today. I found the newspaper article, and the Namibia Trade Forum was conducting a public-private dialogue on the same issue that I wrote in my thesis. I went, I attended, and I spoke to the CEO, who's now my boss in the ministry. And she said, look, you've clearly done well, etc. And I think you'd be an added value to my team, but I don't have any positions. Would you be willing to take an internship position? I said, yes. Again, proximity. And I started learning. I used to get paid 2,500 Rand a month, plus my teaching English gig. So that's what I was doing. But I knew why I wanted to do what I wanted to do. In under a year, I got offered an opportunity to lecture at the university, which is how I met Lizola. In the second year, the UK government headhunted me and took me into this job. So trust me, I am alive to the issues, the bread and butter issues. I absolutely am. And I know what you're talking about, because with my example, you know that I've walked this journey before. But for me, and the answer could be different for you, I never want to do anything that is outside what I'm called to. That's just something I've made peace with in my life. And if it means I'm uncomfortable for that time until I solidify my area of expertise or influence, then that's what I'll do. I'm speaking from it, not from, I'm being cheeky, from a theoretical point of view. I'm literally being practical, because this is a journey I've walked in to get to where I am. So I understand that there's issues around money and people want to get better opportunities. Do I judge them? Absolutely not. I don't. It takes brevity, to a lot of bravado, to say that I'm going to go the long way, but you understand the why. Will I judge you if you take a job now that is not completely true to who you are? I won't. What I will encourage you to do is that even if you take that job, do not forget about your why. Let your why continue to guide you and lead you back to where you need to be. Gosego, thank you very, very much for that. I feel like I have some champions in the room, and I'm very comforted by that. As well as, I'm sorry, I don't want to mispronounce your name, Fairu. I'm sorry, maybe it is. If I mispronounced it, I'm terribly sorry. But thank you for those views and really understanding where I'm coming from. It's not a competitive world. It really depends on which side of the fence you're seating. Again, for me, the question always is, what happens after that? And that's where my focus is. So in closing, I really hope and pray that this was useful for you. I want to see young Africans doing amazing work from wherever you are. I want for you to be part of the solutions that we face as a continent. And I hope that this has at least sparked your way to get there. So thank you again very, very much for the opportunity.
Thank you very much for taking your time to speak to us, and thank you for everyone who attended. I'm sure we all can't live and actualize what Wayne in the chat is calling Stacey Susa-Pinto's theory of proximity and intentionality. So yeah, thank you so much. I'm sure we've all learned a lot, and We really appreciate your presence here today. Have a good evening, everyone, or afternoon,
Thank
wherever you are.
you. Thank you so very much. God bless you. Keep well. Thanks again. Cheers.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.